there, it's Marla here at Narrate. To wrap up the God Has a Name series, Adam connects with 3 people and asks them the question of why do they follow Jesus. In the 8:30 gathering, he visits with Roy Sando, Anna Milburn, and James Busher. Enjoy.
So if you don't get my emails, then you're like, what's going on here? If you do get my emails, maybe you're a little more clear. Come on up here, you guys. Which, if you don't get my emails, I'd love for you to. You just have to tell me. So we'll introduce these guys in just a second, and then let me bring you up to speed. What I want to do here this morning is, look at that, I have a cup holder. For one of the privileges I feel like I have that I realize that not everyone has is that I get to know many of the stories of those of you who are a part of this place. The diversity is pretty awesome. The level of investment is quite humbling. And so for years, I've had this question go through my head as I've watched myriad of you serve and make coffee and do the things you do. Just this question of, I wonder why they follow Jesus. I wonder why they follow Jesus. Which isn't to suggest that there's not a such thing as orthodoxy. I absolutely believe that there is. But I also think we need to be honest about the fact that all of us are personally drawn to Jesus at different seasons and for different reasons. And so having had that thought for a while, recently the creative team, ironically, which is who these guys are from, we started talking about this, and we were like, well, wait a minute, maybe we can put a few people on the stage, and we can take them from teams. So creative team at the 8:30, band at the 10, kids team at the 11:30. Of course, not all of them, but just contingents of them. And we're just going to kind of have this conversation, and it might be a freak show. It might be devastating, and it might be really awesome. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be devastating with these guys. I'm just not sure if I'm going to get a word in edgewise. So let's just start by going, because I think part of this is the awesomeness of so many of you guys work so hard on this thing called Narrate and making this thing happen, and yet what's humbling to me is it's.
Is anybody else hearing that? Can you hear that?
Is your butt talking?
Well, this happened to us last week. I think, yeah, it's...
Adam's watching TV on his phone up here.
It's the Horsing Around podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Let's just play that.
It's the Broncos podcast. See, I'm not the only one that hears things on the stage.
Yeah, I completely understand how you can freak out over that now. I didn't before.
So let's just start by... Part of what I think is awesome is the background and the scope that you guys come from. So let's just take a moment, introduce yourself, and say what you do to feed your family.
Yeah, so I'm Roy Sando. I've got a beautiful wife, Linnea, and 2 weird kids, Oliver and Jasper. In my day job is I work for the U.S. Geological Survey. I study water, basically, in the Pacific Northwest. It's a number of different projects. That's probably the easiest way to describe that.
The stuff that wars will be fought over in 100 years.
Yeah, it's usually not very glamorous or sexy, but apparently now when we have a drought...
It is when you do it.
Everything is when I do it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm Anna Milburn. I guess I pay my rent and feed my family. I'm my family in this scenario. I am a paralegal. But I'm also very, very involved in theater and music, and I'm going to be teaching class at Carroll in the spring, which I'm very, very excited about. And I have a band, and I perform at Grand State sometimes.
She's kind of a big deal.
She's up here a lot.
I'm very, very excited to be up here a lot. So,
yeah, I'm James Busher, and I work for the Helena School District as an English teacher with the Adult Basic Ed program, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's fun.
He's a teacher, hence why he couldn't afford a full-size chair.
He couldn't even afford a chair. That's Kate's. Just so everyone knows.
I borrowed this.
We thought it would be a fun little conversation, like bring your own camp chair, but it turns out that we didn't, so we're skipping that one. So Anna, why don't you start us? Why do you follow Jesus?
why don't I start with me? He was going to talk for us. So we decided. Well...
Were you raised in the church?
I was raised in the church, but I mean, definitely had to come to parts of my life where it had to be something that I believe for myself and not something that I was taught to believe my whole life. And that came in different stages. It wasn't like this one big moment of like, yes. I feel like I'm constantly going through different parts of it, just like, well, I know I believe this now for me. And then will have questions about something else. And it's kind of just this constant. It's never perfect. It's never like, yes, I'm confident all the time about all these different things. But some things I'm like, yes, I hold on to this. And some things I'm like, we're still talking about that. So,
Sure.
yeah.
What compels you to want to still hold on to certain things? Like, what's the compelling why for you?
I think some of it is life experience. These at moments where I feel like the only person there was God, the only person who got me through it. He's proven his faithfulness to me in different occasions. And then, I mean, there are times that I feel like in my prayer time or in a thing I'm going through that I'm like, yes, I really feel you. You are absolutely here. There's no doubt in my mind that you exist and you love me. And then there are times you go through things and you're like, hello?
Yeah.
Are you? And I think that's why it's like a daily thing. But for me, it's like it's also a decision. Like, I want him to be real. So there's that too, I guess.
It's very honest. Yeah. Roy, you're a scientist.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's been no crises in your faith journey.
No, back when we started coming to Narrate in 2012, that was even one of the first things that you and I worked through in some of our first meetings, is just how do you wrestle intellectually with not being able to prove the existence of God and still be able to hold on to that. And it's something I still struggle with, I think. I think I'm definitely very cynical and very skeptical of most things. But man, I try to look at a lot of things as though I was on my deathbed, and how am I going to feel about this when I am on my deathbed? And there's not too many things that stick other than relationship, right? And in fact, a lot of the studies have shown that if you want a content life, if you want a good life, have good relationships, be vulnerable, have people that are close to you that you can count on. And I feel like Jesus models that. He tells everyone, first and foremost, love God and love others as much as you love yourself. And that's a huge thing for me. And like I was saying, I feel like I suck at this a lot. But generally, that's kind of what I hold on to. And I also was raised in the church, and I feel like we're doing our context a disservice if we don't acknowledge that. Because it by acknowledging that, I've allowed to have a lot more tolerance and empathy for people who weren't, and even people who were raised in other religions. I feel like it's not our place to judge that, and that's become, that was a hurdle, and now it's definitely less of one because I've acknowledged that this is my situation, and this is where I'm at.
When did that become a hurdle? Like what?
I think at the point when I had to sort of sort this out for myself. I mean, the first part of my journey, I guess you could say, was out of obedience. Like my parents told me to go to church, my parents told me to do this. And at some point you become discontent with that because that sucks. Nobody wants to listen to their parents till they're 45. Are we not allowed to say sex?
No, I was just thinking my kids are here and they're not supposed to hear that.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. They'll figure that out soon, though.
Oh, no, that's clear.
Yeah. And so, so I mean, and then became this crux of like, well, man, if this is right, why is this right? And why is that not right? Like this is just my situation, and it's just a roll of the dice that I ended up where I'm at. So why is somebody less fortunate than where I'm at not allowed to receive that? And I realized I can't even talk about that. Like that's somebody else's situation, and it's not our place to judge that, I think.
Huh. Sounds like boundaries. I mean, in a sense, it's this sense of like, I'm still responsible for this, no matter what I don't have. I'm still responsible for this.
Yeah, I guess in a way, yeah.
Huh. I'm sorry, I just put words in your mouth. But.
Man, no. I remember specifically the situation that brought this up for you and I when we were talking through this was like children's soldiers or child soldiers, and like going through that instance and how is that okay? Like, how is that okay? How can they live their life like that and not know anything else? And how do you wrestle with that? And eventually, like, I had to just come to the conclusion that God is there and I'm not there, and this is my situation and this is my journey, and that's okay,
Wow. That's really good. James, your background, I think, is important to the conversation.
Sure, yeah. I think like Roy said, I think it's, my dad was a pastor growing up, and people say, like, I grew up in the church, but, like, I literally grew up inside of the church. Like, that's where, like, my summers were spent roaming around, finding, like, the back, like, playing in the baptismal and like stuff like that, you know, like that's what we did. Water. Like playing hide and seek in the church and like.
Did you ever like snack on the communion bread?
Oh yeah, man, totally. Yeah.
Which would mean, did you ever drink the wine?
I don't know. No, it was grape juice, but I definitely had the grape juice all the time. Like yeah. So yeah, I think there's some piece of that growing up like Roy said, it's important to acknowledge that for a long time. Like I followed Jesus because that's just what my family did, you know, and that's how it was. And it's not necessarily like my parents were like, well, you can come to church with us today, or you can go to the mosque if you want. Like it's not like that was an option.
Sure.
So there was a piece of that growing up, but I think it evolves. I think for all of us, why we follow Jesus can be different at different stages, and I think that is why I follow Jesus is because it's always challenging. And I think there's no person in history who has ever spoken to the core of what it means to be human the way that Jesus has and the way his life has. And I think there's something in that like no one ever goes like, oh yeah, well I read the Gospels and so now I got it. Like yeah, sure. Now I mean, it's easy, it's straightforward, it's simple. Like, it's always challenging personally, politically, intellectually. Like, there's always something to wrestle with, and there's always something to be pushed into understanding that I didn't see before, you know. It's like, and it's always radical. It's always something that, like, I don't think we ever get to a point where, like, I've got it pegged, you know?
Sure.
So I think that's, and because of that, I think it just speaks so directly to the heart of who we are as people. Yeah. So I think Jesus speaks right into that.
You're a relatively new dad.
Uh-huh.
How is that? Has that reality? By the way, we didn't rehearse any of this, so I'm just putting these guys on the spot.
Sure.
Has that impacted the why for you?
Yeah, I think there's some. I think you recognize in that the amount of love that God has for you. You know, I think that when we had Jonah, it was, someone described it like you didn't know that your heart was this little acorn and the inside of it was this whole oak tree, you know, that like you have this huge amount of love that you didn't even know was there, but had been there the whole time, I guess, or was just waiting to be planted, or whatever analogy, however that works
really
out.
Cool
that's so
analogy.
Good.
But I mean, I think that's, but that's how it feels, you know. It's like I didn't know that I could love someone so much, who just for existing, you know, like.
Man, but I also feel like you didn't know you could be so frustrated either. Like, let's not paint this picture that it's so easy.
Well, I don't know how you do it.
You mean it's hard for you?
Oh, yeah. Parenting is so hard.
Oh, you must be doing it wrong.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Come on, man.
I'm doing it way wrong.
You remind Roxanne, who's going to be at the 11:30, she says that her mom raised her, and as her mom raised her, she always said, I love you a lot, but not as much as Jesus, but I'm nipping at his heels. Kind of just that there's so much more capacity there. Wow. Sure. Anna, you alluded to this idea that there's stuff that you've held on to and stuff you don't know what to do with, which to me hints at like the theological, doctrinal, relational hills to die on. So what are those things where you went like...
I guess things that are like in gray areas for me, like not...
But what are the like absolutes for you?
Next question.
No, yeah. Ask James.
You said you wrestled through stuff and went like, yes, I believe this.
I think for me, I have decided, like, things that I am solid on are that he is real and that he cares and that he loves me and that he's always there. Those things I'm like, all right, these are my foundation things. Other things that are like, that are not black and white to me anymore. I don't know, things I was told, like, this is wrong and this is right, and I'm saying, I don't know if it's really always just, like, always this way or that way, especially when you're dealing with people and relationships. And I think that when you start dealing in black and whites, that's when you start creating walls and saying, you can't come to Jesus until you fix this part of you. Sure. And that's when I have a problem with creating a black and white thing like that.
And you go like, is this actually like from the text, or is this like,
or is this just something that we've created?
Or is this something that people are afraid of?
I don't think that that's the way that God would want to look at it. God loves everybody and wants everyone to be able to come to him. And so I think any time that we go, well, you need to fix this, that's us saying something like that.
Sure.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. That was a big spot I just put you in.
Good job.
How distinct is your faith from your dad's or your parents, James? And are they? And my follow-up is, are they secure with that?
That's a good question, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if we... I would say it's pretty distinct in that we don't... I mean, my parents didn't really push stuff on me, and even today we don't really talk about it all that much, about faith. We talk about, like, political, social issues and things like that, and how faith kind of manifests. And to some degree, like, I guess that my faith is similar to my parents in the sense that it's like, well, does it result in some action? Does it lead you to not just believe something or think something? Does it lead you to do something where you live and with the people you live? And does it result in something? And those social elements of faith, I think are, I think it's kind of worthless if it doesn't, right? And so I think in that regard that my parents set an excellent example of that, like less preaching and more doing. Okay. And I think that's always been kind of powerful to me, and it took me some time to get there, because I think you get into the pattern of like, well, I have to be at church on Sunday because my dad works at church and I have to go, and it's not really a choice. And then you go off to school and you're like, oh, I don't have to go, I guess. Yeah. So I'm not gonna go. Right? And then that's, in a sense, that's freeing, and then you go like, well, but I want to go. You get to the point of wanting to do it, and I had to take some space from that. I had to take some time to kind of get the need to be there, the need to be at church, the need to be involved with everything, like off my back, and feel like I was doing it because I wanted to and not because I should. And that took some time. That took a little while to wrestle through. Like, I don't go there because I should. I go and I do stuff with church and in the community because I want to, and because there's tangible value to it. And that was a journey. And that, I stepped away from coming to church regularly and participating regularly for a while, just to sort that out for myself, and it was really healthy.
I feel like that's a common, Richard Rohr talks about that a lot, like where you have this first stage of faith being like a very legalistic and dogmatic sort of construction of something, of a foundation, and then you realize that is a terrible way to live. And so you deconstruct it and you rip it all apart, but then you realize that there was something to it, and so you start to pick the value out of that and put it back together.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's a much more holistic, gracious sort of faith that is actually alive. Is actually
truthful.
Very truthful, very attractive, not so much out of obedience, but because you want to do it.
Yeah, when you saying that, it's part of what I've so appreciated about my experience here in this community is, I mean, that deconstructionist phase is so easy to get stuck in. And I mean, it's Vern on my last conversation before I left Billings of Adam, you don't even have to get out of bed. Like, vision costs you not. Like, it's just so easy to be cynical. And you can claim vision, but really you're just deconstructing everything. And
Sure.
you guys, and part of, I suppose, why I wanted to do this is you guys are this great example of people who didn't get stuck in that second phase. But even what you're talking about, James, so what is it? Why does it matter? What are you going to do? Like, let's just not have these intellectual debates. Like, how does this translate? And constructing something. Thank you to all of you guys and you guys for modeling that. So having said that, then how? And I don't know who wants to answer this first, but how do you? Roy does. Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say Anna.
When do you feel most connected? Like, how do you feel your strongest connection? When do you feel the strongest connection, you and God?
Oh, man.
Besides the sermon. I mean, that's a given.
Right now.
I'm usually sleeping during the sermon, so that helps.
On stage talking about it.
So honest.
No, man, it kind of depends. I mean, a huge thing for me is I hunt a lot, but I mean, hunting is a loaded term. What I get out of that is just the solitude and just the time to reflect out in the mountains and the endorphins and just exercise and peace. I get God in that a lot. I also get God in people a lot. I need people, which is ironic because I married the biggest introvert on earth. So
it always works that way. It's not
it
ironic
does.
at
It
all.
always works that way. Yeah, it's polarizing. I need people. I need solitude. It kind of depends on where I'm at and what I need at that point. I'm definitely not like you. Like, you talk about your chair time all the time, and I'm like, I would much rather sleep an extra 10 minutes because I know my kid is going to get up and scream about having to poop in 10 minutes, and so I'm going to try and get a little more sleep.
Just to be clear, my chair time is driven by selfishness because I'm like, I would rather have those 10 minutes alone than wake up to the crying kid. Yeah.
So yeah.
Fair enough. Anna, how about for you?
I think there definitely is that the chair time thing about getting into the Word and seeking after God and having that moment.
So that's
meeting.
Something that works for you?
That,
unlike
yeah,
Roy?
I mean, but then also there's...
you read your Bible is what you're saying.
I'm like the lazy people here.
yes, you are. But, I mean, sometimes it's just when you're dealing with something specific and being like, I don't want to just sit here and be despairing, but actually start talking to God about it. I feel this way. I don't like feeling this way. And meeting him in that extremely emotional time, too. I don't know. I guess like that.
So chair time is part of it, and then...
Just day to day, just whenever.
So there's a semi-perpetual connection for you?
Yeah, and I have like kind of bizarre conversations. Like I'm not actually very good at group praying because my conversation, I'm like, hey, this isn't cool. I don't know how many people would benefit from me talking with God and being like a part of that because there's very strange conversations sometimes. So, and sometimes it's like what we were talking about, like, am I creating the God I need in that instance? Like, I need God to say this, or I just need to have this ridiculous conversation. Like, how we were kind of talking about that.
Yeah. Well, even, like, what do you even mean when you say connect with God, right? Like you just have this feeling of fullness, or, I mean, I still don't know what that means. I feel good when I'm out in the mountains and by myself.
Sure.
I guess I feel close to God relative to other times when I don't feel close to God.
Isn't it frustrating when the fleece thing doesn't work too? Like, we're like, I'm so close to God. I want you to guide every decision I make. I'm going to put a fleece out like the Gideon fleece. And he just doesn't respond to those things. I'm just like, make it wet. God's like, It's like, come on. I'm trying to follow you. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's my turn.
Oh, is it? I just wanted to keep talking.
Think what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh. Could we turn her microphone off?
This is only for people with chairs.
So anyway.
Stool people don't. I think I don't really have much new to add to the conversation, but I think it's for me it's outside. I think in in the quiet and solitude of the outdoors. I think there's something especially unique in our culture when we're so plugged in all the time to so much stuff just streaming right at our face, that I think there's some truth in like being able to go into wild spaces where it's like pure creation of God, and I think he wants to be known through that, and I think it's a beautiful way to know him, because there's nothing between what he's made and where you are, and when I was guiding up in British Columbia, guiding people through
life guiding
through like mountaineering stuff.
Pay no attention to the peanut gallery.
Right. I would always think back if people don't talk about God, then the rocks will cry out. And I think we read that as like a curse, like you have to talk about God or the rocks are going to roar and come to life, which would be pretty cool, actually. But I always thought of that as like a blessing of like God will be known because his creation will not allow him to not be known. And this world that we live in reflects the glory of God if we can take the time to get into the world that he made, and not so much the world that we keep making. And I think there's truth in that, and there's freedom in that. I think that's through getting out in the wild and reading, and not even just reading the text. I think God owns all the truth. So I read a lot of literature, and Ernest Hemingway said the greatest books are the ones that are more true than if they had actually happened. And I think there's something in that, and that's why I read literature. And I think I connect through non-biblical texts because those texts, again, speak to who we are as humans. They speak to the core of what makes us human. And I think God is intimately interested in that because he's created that. And so through those points of connection, that's how I connect.
So one more thing, and one of the projects, this one gets tricky for me, and these guys know this one's coming, but one of the observations I've made over the years is that those of you who are a part of this community, meaning like more often than not on Sundays, there's tremendous advantage to that. And one of the conversations I find myself having frequently are with people who wish that they had a different experience relationally or otherwise. And from my perspective, one of the problems is you're not regular enough to be known and form some of those relationships and some of those different things. And so we've even tried in different ways in the past to create these projects, interviews and sorts, where we just ask people, like, why are you here most Sundays? But I hope you can also see that that's kind of a hard question for me to ask because I've kind of got a horse in the race, so to speak. What I didn't know until we got to here was when we started looking at the 9 names we put together, we're like, whoa, wait a minute. These are all people who you're here. Like most Sundays you're here. And so I just wanted to ask them, why? What's been the value of that for you? As we live in a world where once a month is the new every week. That's the reality. And the last thing that I want to do is create a community that we try to control that or shame that. And yet there's obvious advantage to that. I'm curious what that advantage has been in your guys' lives. How have you seen? Because even you, James, like you've talked about, like there was a season where that wasn't the case, and now it very much is.
Sure.
So I don't know who wants to go first, but what's the value of being a regular part of this thing on Sundays for you guys?
I think largely, like, this is my team. I don't think this is the only community that we could have been a part of, but for whatever it's worth, like, this is the one that we chose, and it's great. And a lot of these people have been a huge part of our lives. So one, it's a community. 2, I get a lot of soulful regeneration through music and worship. And Kate put so much time and effort, Kate and the whole band, but particularly Kate, in leading the band and picking out the songs. And it's just a time that we can just come and worship God, and that's huge to me. And then also to put my kids in the nursery for an hour. Right? Sure. I should have said that one first. No.
The problem is one of them's not. His poor wife is.
I know. But
weird.
seriously, the community
miss
thing
my
is
kid.
huge. Please.
So
Yeah, I forgot how easy parenting is.
it's so painful to be apart from him for an hour.
Mine would be the relationships. I was just thinking about some people that have really, really strongly affected my life recently are in this room right now. Like people that completely changed the course of my life just by knowing them. Like not just my family who's here, but like people that I've met from coming to Narrate. And I am going on some really cool, like different detours of my life because I know them. And I don't know, I always think about how thankful I am for them all the time. And so I mean, I guess there's that just.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I think, like I said, for me, it was a journey to get to the point of wanting to be here every week, and I think I do it because I've chosen to do it, and I think there's something about committing to doing something, and that's always been huge for me. If you say you're going to be somewhere, then be there. If you say you're going to do something, then do something. And showing up is just such a huge piece of that. And I think there's just value, whether it's church or a team or just with friends, like just showing up where you say you're going to show up. There's just so much value in it, and it's so important to just show up. And I think that's part of that. Church has been, and Narrate specifically, has been a place where Jenny and I have decided we want to show up, and we want to invest and be a part of what Narrate is doing because we believe in it, and that requires just being there, and being there to whatever our capacity is, and it's changed, with kids and things like that. And there's also, and the great thing is, there's also room for that. That, like, you don't have to be at everything, but just saying I'm going to show up. When I can show up and making it a priority has been awesome, because again, you make connections and meet people and build relationships that are extremely valuable and are insulating against things that are tough too. And we all need that, and we all need those connections, and kind of like. And we said when we dedicated Jonah that I want to be around people I like, and I like the people at Narrate. And so I come.
So you get one word, but no description. To describe, what's the word that for you most captures why you follow Jesus?
You can't do that without a cliche.
No, because this will lead to more conversation, because you just get to say the word, not the why.
Yeah.
I would say radical.
I would say grace.
I guess relationship.
Lord, thanks for community and people, and thanks, God, that you are a secure God, that you seem to have this perfect balance of control and freedom, and we trust, though it's perplexing at times, we trust the way you're navigating that dynamic in this world. Thanks, Lord, that you are true and real, and yet secure enough to not be known perfectly or even perfectly accurately or even homogeneously. God, thanks for community and the opportunity to add dimension to who you are by doing this in community. We love you, Lord. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Let me also really quickly say that when we first started to come here, we were not like part of the team. And it was just a quick email to Adam and vulnerability, and now we are part of this team. So it's a very quick transition and worthwhile.
Yeah. Thanks. Sure love you guys. Have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.